I grew up just as a sporty kid, always loved the outdoor adventure. And when I was 19, I packed up my car with my best friends and moved to Tofino to learn how to surf. And after throwing ourselves in the ocean multiple times, trying to figure it all out, I eventually sort of stumbled into Surf Sister, which was kind of in its beginner phase of creation. My name is Krissy Monty, and I'm the owner and operator of Surf Sister Surf School. Yeah, so Surf Sister was originally started by another woman. She saw kind of the need for instruction in this town. There was a lot of women and children who wanted to approach surfing but were quite nervous to get into the sport. So she created Surf Sister as kind of like an accessible entry into it. I came into the company in the very early years, and quite soon after that we sort of expanded our mandate, and we teach men, women, anyone of all ages and abilities to learn how to surf. Working in the surf instruction industry, it's can be very physically demanding as well as emotionally demanding. You are pushing your body's limits quite a bit, and each day to meeting new clients, you're coming into new challenges, be it personal challenges with people or physical challenges. So it does take quite a bit of depth in order to be able to be a good instructor. If I wasn't teaching surfing, and if I wasn't the owner of Surf Sister, I imagine I would still be a teacher of some sort. I always loved sports so much, so I'd probably be like a high school PE teacher or something. But yeah, I always loved sport instruction, guiding people. I'm sure I'd be something along those lines. One of the things about surfing, is the connections you make with other people. Right away it kind of demands that a person be quite a hardy human being, someone who's not afraid of failure, who's not afraid to kind of pick themselves up, dust themselves off and try again. Surfing takes a lot of tenacity, so the people that it attracts tend to have a lot in common. It has such an ability to put you in the here and now. It's so great for mental and physical health. It exerts your body, but also too it does have such a mental component to it, because it is really just you versus the waves. Surf instruction, it's fun, but there is a harsh reality to it, in that you are in charge of people's safety. About 3 years ago, we had, a pretty major event happen at Surf Sister. We just saw a woman, yell and pass out. The instructors pulled her out of the water and immediately started doing CPR on her. We called an ambulance and, continued to work on this woman for a very long time. In the end, she was flown to another hospital, and she was pronounced dead. She had a brain aneurysm. This was, not something we could have prevented as a surf school. It was just a total tragedy. Her family was on the lesson with us as well, so they witnessed the whole thing. So it was an extremely traumatic event. Most of my staff sign up to be surf instructors because they love surfing, they love people, they want to share that experience and share that positivity. So when an experience like this happens, it's definitely throws you for a loop. I felt so guilty that it wasn't me who was there on the scene to help at the time, and that it was, a couple of the, my instructors who had just, signed up to do this kind of fun job, and all of a sudden they were dealing with a very, life-altering experience. As a staff, what we did to kind of come together afterwards was, we all met up and had an evening together, just took some time away, just, you know, to be together as a group and grieve. We, you know, gave them time off. We basically said as much time as they need, they can take, whatever that looks like. You know, we encouraged them and got them, you know, to see professional counselors to get through the event. You know, we kept in touch with them to follow up daily to see how they're doing. We just assumed that they were in shock. You know, we just, you know, tried to start supporting them as quickly as possible. It was actually friends who are paramedics who reached out to us saying, here are some numbers for some therapists that specialize in trauma that these girls are going to want to get a hold of who perform CPR. So, you know, I feel so grateful to this community for being such a tight-knit community, and that right off the very get-go, everyone was trying to support each other as best as possible. After that, I felt like the next sort of feelings I felt were that of, you know, guilt, that it wasn't me at the beach helping, that it was my staff that had to go through it, and then like a protection, like I have to look after my staff like they were my kids, you know. So sorry.
No, it's okay.
My little kitty. The feeling of guilt definitely crept up on me as the time passed, you know, hours and then days especially. It was probably about day 2 or 3 where I almost felt like paralyzed with the guilt, just because I was so concerned with how my staff was doing. I just didn't want this to, you know, traumatize them for the rest of their lives, essentially. Brain could comprehend what had happened, and I fundamentally understood that it wasn't our fault. It was nothing that we had done incorrectly. It was not my, you know, fault as an owner or a manager. It was nothing I had done poorly or incorrectly. My brain understood that, but my body didn't. And so I had this sort of panicky, shaking feeling and felt just sort of sick to my stomach. And it wasn't until we kind of went through that process together and that I was able to sort of come out of that cycle of grief and guilt. Yeah, I don't think I ever really let on to the staff how guilty I felt. I, you know, didn't want them to see how broken I was, because, you know, they looked to me as like a leader. And so I didn't want them to see me, you know, very upset, essentially. So I kind of did my best to hide it from them and tried to, you know, stay positive and stay in that strong leadership form. But I think that's why behind the scenes I went and had to do some work on myself just to make sure that I was supported, so that way I could then support them. After that event happened, we took some, you know, time to think about like what is best moving forward. One of the things we figured, or we tried to do from the very beginning, is during the onboarding process with our staff is show them that there are lots of resources available in event of a minor event or a major event or whatever's going on in their personal lives. So we definitely try to be as supportive as possible. And in event if something, you know, to that magnitude happens again, we have a framework of what we did to get through last time, and then hopefully, you know, what we can do the next time to just make sure that everyone's supported. looking back on that time, you know, what I did to help me get through it was, you know, I did talk about it. I definitely turned to the ocean, you know, tried to get my body moving, because I feel like, you know, your body holds a lot of that emotion in it. So if I can get my body moving, I can help sort of release that. I definitely needed friends and family during that time.
Yeah, I reckon we were heathens.
Yeah, I think one of the things that did help those, you know, staff members get through it was living in communal living. You know, seeing yourself through your friendships, I think was like a good mirror on them. I know one of them was definitely, you know, kind of trying to play the strong, you know, non-emotional type, but just, you know, seeing themselves in their friendships with the people around them, they kind of realize that, you know, what they are going through was significant, and that they were allowed to have these feelings and to cry and to break down and, you know, ask for help. They didn't need to be this stoic human that didn't feel, you know. So I think that living in a communal situation, being close to people, being accountable, was really important. Also to just being in this tiny community that it is, we had so many people reach out to us as a staff. The paramedics, the hospital here all followed up with us just to make sure we were okay, and also to let those girls know that the job they performed, like performing CPR and doing everything they could to keep essentially that woman's body alive, they did everything they could do, and they did it correctly, and just that they are supported, you know, the community's here for them, and I just feel really appreciative that Tofino has my back.
Yeah, totally.
I will follow you to Virgins. That's what us boys are for, to help you out when you get weary and you can't go no more. And can't you see her up there, Cody? I can see her through the pine. Say, boys, be good. Slay. Okay, that was much better.
It was better, definitely
That
not
one
perfect.
definitely not perfect.
Like,
but
I
that's
messed
cool with
up
me.
a few
Yeah,
times.
that's cool with me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Greens. Thanks.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Obi.